going to be an informal chat about the thought processes and everything that went into creating the Star Citizen universe. We've got some guests here. I'm going to introduce them, call up to the panel here. First, I'm going to start with our Director of Community Engagement and Online Strategy, Mr. Benjamin Lesnick. Any of the video content we put out in the last 2 years, you'll be familiar with that. Next up is our Vice President of Marketing, Ms. Sandy Gardner. Co-founders of the company. That's Sandy. Up next, just returning from the UK yesterday, where they've been for 4 months working on the performance capture of Squadron 42, our lead writer, Mr. Dave Hack. And joining him from the UK after 4 months of performance capture with a faraway stare in his eyes, the man himself, our grand poobah, Mr. Chris Roberts. Are your microphones working?
Testing.
All right. Well, you're not here to talk to me, so I'm going to leave it in the hands of Mr. Chris Roberts. Or do we want to start with Dave? Dave started? Who started? Who started? Who started? Dale started. Okay, got your flipper?
All right. As you guys know, normally we have GamesCon and CitizenCon that are coming up. So GamesCon's in about 4 weeks, and CitizenCon's about a couple months after that. So we have quite a few things to show there. So we thought here at ComicCon, what would be fairly appropriate will be to talk about the universe, the galaxy, and sort of how we came about it, and sort of the thought process behind it, in a way that maybe we haven't had an opportunity to sort of talk and interact with you guys in the past. And then after that, we'll let you guys ask questions, which doesn't necessarily need to be just about the universe and the various things that we sort of thought about while we're doing it. It could be about other things in Star Citizen and Squadron 42. If you like, we'll answer it to the best of our ability. So, let me go here. So, if you guys know Star Citizen, it's a brand new universe to explore. And the whole idea of building this universe was to have something that would allow players to pretty much do whatever they wanted to do. So whether it would be a mercenary, a pirate, or a bounty hunter, and a whole bunch of actually other roles and professions, but to create a sort of living, breathing universe and ecosystem. And it's something that I've wanted to do for a long, long time. And if you followed my games back to Wing Commander and Privateer, and later on Freelancer, you can sort of see a general theme about it. One of the core processes that we did, or when I was starting this, Dave was one of the very, very merry band of brothers at the beginning. There was maybe about 5 of us all working on a very early prototype and coming up with the fiction. So Dave and I sort of sat down and were thinking about, well, let's set this into a relatable universe that could feel real to people. We can tell all these sort of stories and adventures inside, and make various factions sort of real, and have real manufacturers, and really build a universe sort of from a foundational outlook. Because a lot of times when you make a game, you make a movie, you make a TV show, you sort of come up with a story, and then you sort of flesh out the universe as you go. Wing Commander was that, I originally came with Wing Commander, and I wanted sort of this very sort of like good guy against bad guy, sort of almost parallel to World War II. I think if you guys know Wing Commander, generally the pattern of it is the War in the Pacific, the Kilrathi were the sort of stand-in for the Japanese, and the Federation was stand-in for the sort of US Navy and Marines. And but the rest of that universe wasn't really sketched out at all, and that was something we wanted to do very differently with Star Citizen. I wanted to build a universe, as you say here.
Anybody here play Wing Commander?
Yeah. Well, you know what we should ask is who here is a backer? And who here is finding out about Star Citizen for the first time? Hello. Well, welcome.
Well, it's maybe, it'll be a cool universe, we'll tell you that. But the sort of two core experiences that we're building is Star Citizen, which is sort of the open experience that you can pretty much do anything in this universe, be who you want, choose what profession you want, go where you want. It's sort of a very big sort of open sandbox. That's the sort of big, ambitious online game that we hope is going to run for years and years and years. And we're really putting a lot of effort and investment and thought into building that in the most sort of open and flexible manner for the long term. And it's set in sort of the 30th century setting that we come up with. That United Empire of Earth which is sort of humanity and the government or the empire that runs humanity spread out over many, many different planets and systems, is struggling to sort of maintain the empire, mainly because it's sort of expanded to a certain level and there is only so much it can do to keep the empire together in the sort of face of sort of external threats and sort of internal economic pressures, which is something that, if you look back in history, we've sort of seen in quite a few empires that sort of fall under their own weight and stuff like that. The second sort of game aspect is Squadron 42, which is a single-player narrative experience that whoever, if you're in Star Citizen, you can play this, and it's actually a really great entrance into the universe and the story. And in that particular one, you play a UE naval pilot, and you sort of follow his sort of journey and adventure, and it's you as, so it's not his, it's your journey and adventure. And that's much more reminiscent of the experience that Wing Commander gave, where I sort of feel like you're in the middle of a big space epic and you're the star instead of watching it. So how do we start with that? Well, we decided, as I mentioned, we're going to build a universe first. One of the things that I like to do, I mentioned in Wing Commander that I picked sort of the War in the Pacific and World War II for the template for Wing Commander. In this one, we were thinking, well, we'll use history as a launching point. One of the reasons to do that is that if you relate it to real history, it becomes much more relatable and understandable to people because they can sort of, see things that they know about, and so therefore different intrigues or situations sort of feel real. So Dave and I went over several different history points. One of them was sort of the age of exploration, 15th, 17th century, post-war reconstruction after World War II, sort of the Three Kingdoms, Han Dynasty, and sort of ancient Rome, antiquities around about sort of the later period of Rome onwards. For those of you familiar with Star Citizen, you're probably familiar that we chose the sort of decline and fall of Rome, which is sort of the later period of Rome. We thought it was a really great setting because it allows for both personal intrigue. There's a lot of sort of geopolitical stuff. There's, if you want to be an independent trader or an adventurer, that's all possible, but there's also a big military conflict that happens, as it did back then. It felt like that was a really great analogy or a starting base for our universe. And so for us, we sort of created the United Empire of Earth and followed very much the same sort of setup. So it's kind of the history, which I don't know if any of you guys are in the very early stages of when we very first started Star Citizen. Before we actually announced the game, before I showed it, we started the Robert Space Initiative's website, and we had 30 days where we were actually talking about the history, and every day, I believe, we posted a time capsule, which I'll let, Dave wrote most of it. We went up and we came up with this.
Well, actually, and also the thing too, once we sort of circled it on the sort of ancient Rome as a time period to sort of launch from, it became, all right, well, how do we get from now until then? Like, what is the major events that happened that bridge modernity to the era that one is doing the game? And so it turned out, fortuitously enough, to be these 30 events that we sort of discussed, as sorts of major tentpole events that happened that we ended up transforming into the time capsule. So every day we would do a single sort of, Chris is, as you all know, with his previous stuff, is very big into in-universe stuff and keeping it all immersive. So we decided to try and release each of these kernels of information wrapped up in a piece of fiction. So it could be a news article, it could be a diary excerpt, it could be a movie review, it could be any number of things that would just talk about the event in a way that was not just like, hey, this happened, see you tomorrow, type thing. So yeah, and so basically these events, and then it also gave us the areas that we needed to figure out what do we need to explore further and what do we need to refine. So
One of the pretty good, so general events like, discovering, the first sort of quantum drive, right? The first time we colonized the planet, the first time.
Terraformed one.
Yeah, terraformed one, the first time went to another system. Sort of the progression of the
First contact
with aliens, how the Empire. So originally, we sort of based it starting from today, moving forward. So, the next step was, well, perhaps the United Nations becomes the government of Earth, and then at some point they start to colonize other planets, and then it's the United Planets of Earth, and then at some point the sort of democratic system is overthrown, and it becomes the United Empire of Earth. And so we sort of traced it through up until the point that Star Citizen and Squadron 42 starts, which was when we made the announcement back on October 10th of 2012. So here's the timeline. I'm not going to bore all you guys with it. It is actually still on our website, I'm pretty sure, and it's part of sort of the history. But we very much wanted to sort of trace the history from today through to when the game starts and build it up and build up corporations or planets or characters, and so we have a very rich setting to tell a lot of stories, because it's not just the story of Squadron 42. We're planning to have a lot of different stories in the universe itself that you'll be able to experience, and in some ways also sort of impart your own sort of imprint on it. So we'll definitely have parts of the game as when the universe becomes live, that you as a player will be able to potentially affect it, or to sort of leave your name in history, so to speak. Keep on going.
And it was also, one of the things too was trying to, because again, all of those were being released before Chris had even announced what the game was going to be. So for a lot of people, they were just sort of following the stuff, but they didn't know where it was going. And because one of the things too is also, that was important, I remember in our discussion, was making sure that there's sort of, it's not black and white. There's a lot of sort of moral ambiguity and grayness and stuff. So if you go through each of those historical events, like humanity falters, humanity makes really dumb decisions, and which is fiction, I know, but it's not just sort of this idealized perfection. It's like people screw up and people make bad decisions and stuff like that, just to make it feel more believable and more real. The goodness earned and the badness bad type thing.
Yeah, and I think we ran the history up until 2942, I'm pretty sure, and kind of the way we've sort of been playing it is in our real calendar time. We increase it, so now it's 2015, so it's 2945 in our world, and sort of at the point of the Empire, which is where you would start to play the game, and the Empire sort of dealing with its various threats, some of which are kind of around. So I can talk a little bit here, but we have the factions and races, which sort of makes sense. So this is the United Empire. We talked about it's coming sort of on the tail end of several hundred years of sort of imperialistic, despotic rule, and it's sort of changing a little bit as it's sort of a bit more inward looking. It's not quite as militaristic, it's not quite as sort of gung-ho, and it's trying to sort of keep itself together in the face of several threats, one of which is the Vandal. This is the main enemy of Squadron 42. They're analogous to the Visigoths and the Vandals of antiquity, and they're on the western side of the Empire and sort of pushing in. They've already made a few of the further systems of the Empire untenable, and essentially they're very clan based. They're not really easy to pin down. They're incredibly tenacious, and most of the time the Empire has just managed to sort of hold their own against them, not necessarily sort of defeat them and push them back, because they're not the same as a traditional
military force.
Yeah, military force. The other, some of the other races is the Banu. They're on the southern side of the Empire. They're much less antagonistic to the empire. They're a race of sort of nomads and traders, and they're sort of analogous to sort of North Africa, the Middle East, and sort of Barbary Coast, where you can trade with. And it will be an area that will be a lot of opportunity for sort of more sort of merchants and exploration focused players in the game. Then there's the Shan, who are on the eastern side of the empire. They're analogous to the Persian Empire or, say, the Chinese empire. And they've been around for 10,000 years as a very sort of old, almost inscrutable empire. And there's a kind of slightly cold standoff between the Shan and humanity, where they trade and do business together, but they don't quite fully trust each other. Not dissimilar to maybe what happens with China and the US at the moment. So those are the main factions. We actually have one more alien race that we talk about, the Tabara, which you'll see, but that's a race that humanity defeated twice, quite a few hundred years ago, and essentially.
They assimilated them into so they're sort of now technically part of the empire, but are conflicted about how they feel about that.
I think the next system is inside this universe. One of the other, big things one of the big differences in what we're trying to do with Star Citizen, we've gone to this level of trying to build a universe that feels real and relatable. And so for us, that goes down onto like every aspect of it. So one of them is how we design the star systems and the planets themselves. So we're not the only space game out there. There's quite a few other ones. There is a trend to be doing more sort of procedural space creation, which is very cool in that you can travel large distances and visit lots of different areas. But the downside of it is that you don't. It's a bit more generic because you're not really crafting it. And so for the way that we're building Star Citizen, because it's built in a very high fidelity manner, from the storytelling, from the detail, from how detailed the ships are, how detailed the characters are, the amount of different things that you can do, we sort of felt like the best way would be to really sort of build the systems and the planets in a way that sort of feels organic to the universe and the world. And we didn't feel like that would be a good way to just do it in sort of more procedural manner. We do use some procedural stuff to like lay out asteroid fields and stuff like that to help sort of build the universe, but in terms of the planets, the backstory of them, the companies on them, the characters on them, all that is kind of scripted and storied out. In the same way, you probably wouldn't want to see a movie that someone had 100 different random acts in it, and they have a program just pushes them together in different ways. Probably wouldn't make a story that's as compelling as one that you can craft yourself. We built it that way to enable the players themselves to do different things in the different systems. So the different kind of actions you can do on the system, the trade, the business you can do will be sort of quite specific to the different planets in the systems, and we can also set extra stories in them. On top of that, we've built different locations or planets that you can sort of, or systems that you can discover. So that will be part of the game. Exploring is one of the sort of features of the game, and we're building content towards that. So as an example of a few of the systems, I'll let Dave do a bit of talking here.
So terrorists, are sort of up and coming, rising socio-economic and political power in the Empire of Earth. Is part of the despotic rule. It was fun to have a counterbalance to it. So there was this sort of Messer era, which was the regime, and Terra was sort of the ones who sort of stood up to him and his ilk. So they've always been sort of fashioning themselves as very progressive and stuff like that. And to use the sort of ancient Rome analog in sort of Constantinople, the Terra became a sort of beacon in the East that was sort of this progressive, this nexus of trade and all this stuff, and was sort of forward thinking, and Earth was sort of viewed as backward thinking. And so part of it was also, to Chris's point about the sort of handcrafted thing is, for among you backers there, I assume that there are some of you who are Terra supporters as opposed to some are Earth supporters. But that's what you get with this sort of handcrafted, is that you can have things for people to latch onto to argue over, which is amazing and great to watch. But yeah, so Terra is sort of the up-and-comer in the Empire, and has really kind of vying for this new position as this is what humanity is now. Let's put to bed humanity of the past and embrace who we are now. We're a spacefaring species, and yada, yada, yada. So it's creating a little bit of tension, and tension that will play out, once you guys get in there and help or hurt it. And then Ellis is sort of primarily just sort of home of the Murray Cup, which is a racing thing, which is actually one of the things you can do now in Arena Commander, which is race your ships.
Yeah, and I think our plan is in the actual universe will allow the racing profession to be something you can do. And there'll be a circuit that will be around the universe, and we'll have races between the different, over time, and people can sort of go in, can sort of race in the qualifying ranks to get over.
We actually have a racing season.
Yeah, we'll have a racing season, and we'll report on it. Not necessarily going to be everybody doing that, but it'll be kind of cool, and that's actually a great example of sort of user-generated content. You have those questions, they're sort of generating stories and headlines.
Yeah.
If you're in a bar, you can see an update on how the cup standings are doing, just like you would be seeing in Formula One.
And plus, that great opportunity for us to actually get to interview a player who wins the Murray Cup for an in-fiction news article that we run in the game. I mean, it's so meta. Right?
So yeah, we're definitely trying to do that.
Nix. Talked about the despots, the messers. So Nix was a system that was set up by a bunch of expatriates and activists who were basically trying to set up their own sort of egalitarian, community in unclaimed space. And unfortunately, there's sort of like let's all be free and stuff like that. It was cool, but it was also great for the criminal element that we're looking for a place to kind of hide out. So it's sort of a landing zone that's in the kind of an identity crisis, because there's a strong, like, political-minded, righteousness there mixed with this sort of criminal element that's taking advantage of it. And probably a place where people who, I don't know if anyone has illegal intent in the game, will probably become very, very, very familiar with it.
Yeah, and then it'll be one of the Nix and Terra. There's a few others that will be for the very first early sort of Universe Alpha. We're sort of concentrating on 5 different systems in the player. So first off, we'll probably have one system. We'll have multiple landing locations on Amazon, and then we'll expand to 5 systems. Nix is one of the early ones that we're in production on now. It's got some pretty amazing stuff. Not quite ready to show it yet. Tony would kill me if he showed some stuff just yet, but it's very cool. I think when you guys get to see it, we'll be quite happy. But again, there's a definite character and feeling for different environments and locations.
Yeah, you really visually immediately know you're in a different location than like Terra.
Yeah, so I'm quite excited to show you guys some of the stuff down the road. And then Ryan.
First site basically was a human-controlled system, and that was the first time that they got touched by the Vandal. Needless to say, they left no one alive. Was abandoned by the UEE, and as they got pushed back further and further among 4 or 5 systems, but Orion still has sort of these shattered cities that existed, So this is sort of another, we're looking at sort of spectrum ends of the different possible locations. This would be sort of the Vandal, an example of a Vandal-controlled system. So,
This universe is somewhere you go, you kind of Vandal. You can trade, it's beyond control the
Yeah.
empire. It's also something that will feature in Squadron 42.
yeah. And there are humans that still live there. That inhabitants that have been left over since the basically the abandonment of Orion. So there will be people to talk to and then hide from, depending on how we go.
Was this the last squadron?
No, that was Caliban.
Caliban.
Yeah.
Yeah, we got some stuff that's Squadron 42. Down the road would be quite good. Okay, so, sort of the go around the universe, go to systems where you need to travel between them. Ships is sort of one of the last pillars of kind of how we wanted to build out the universe. And it's also an example of how the different ships have their different roles. The obvious ones, which you've sort of seen in a lot of different space games, so things like starfighters, sort of torpedo bombers, merchant transports, pirate ships, multi-crew explorers. That's sort of new for what we're doing with Star Citizen, where we're allowing you to have multi-crew ships, and we're going to be showing some stuff at Gamescom that I think hopefully people are really going to like, because in Gamescom it's going to be our first demonstration of large world. So that means we've got a map that's mind-bogglingly big. So just flying between these two moons at normal speed will take you about 2 hours. So it's all one map, but we're going to have multiple multi-crew ships and a whole bunch of stuff that we'll show at Gamescom. And that's something that I think is one of the big sort of selling points or promises of Star Citizen. UE naval ships are the big ships that you sort of encounter in Squadron 42 and later on, and also things like the Idris or the Javelin, which a few people in the community have, and I will tell you from so far and how they're pretty amazing. So I'm kind of looking forward to sharing some of that stuff down the road with you when we'll show you a bit more of Squadron 42. But they're built out in a level of detail that I haven't seen before in the game. And then alien ships like the Vandal ships, Jean ships. And then later on, we sort of have been digging down because we're really big in the universe of trying to create gameplay that is not just about combat, to allow people to do more than one thing, to do non-combat roles. So we have all sorts of stuff. And I think this is one of the things long term that will be a big hook for Star Citizen in general. It's just that it's not all about combat. So right now you can play Arena Commander and really just find those single-seater ships. That's going to change soon when we give you the multi-crew Arena Commander 2.0, which will be just shortly after Gamescom. And then you'll be able to play the multi-crew ships. We will put that on the large world map, so there'll be a lot more play area for people. So it's going to be a pretty big game changer, and then from there it drops into sort of our early system universe stuff. But we're allowing for a lot more roles. So ships will allow you to salvage, mine, repair, do data running, science exploration, commercial starliners. We just had a ship, the Genesis, that we recently sort of profiled. Modular transports, so much bigger, sort of like container ships, luxury ships, search and rescue, racing ships, medical ships, sort of news vans, journalism based ships. So there's all these different ships help drive the various roles you can do in this universe, which helps a lot. We really tried to build unique personality for the ships themselves. So we tried to give each one a manufacturer, a whole background in terms of different equipment manufacturers, and they have styles and looks and feels, and it's all part of trying to make this sort of universe feel real and relatable. And I think it's one of the things that I think people like and respond to, is that it sort of feels like these ships all fit inside the universe and they all have a place and they feel like they're logical. The component aspect of it, which is still in its early days, the system's been built for it. We just haven't had the time to build enough of the components. Will allow, besides the base ship you have, to sort of modify it so the ship is built to run fast and quiet, or it's built to really get in there in a fight and take a lot of damage, or smuggle things. And so we sort of allow you to customize your ship beyond just buying the base ship. And that, in some ways, is again another way of sort of personalizing your gameplay experience, and sort of almost like your ship in some ways a representative of you as a player, which is pretty cool. And
it also, just real quick, one of the things, to the level of specificity for that is, to the point where style guides are being developed by the artists too, so you could almost visually identify like guns and identify what brand gun that is. Like that's very consistent. Like a lot of attention is being paid on like form language and stuff like that, making sure it's consistent, making sure these companies not only have their own identity, but they have their own sort of reputation in the marketplace. So this company's great, but they use cheap parts, so the guns are crap, but they're cheap. So so it's a lot of mixing, matching with the type of things that really let people kind of find define their ship in their own style and the type of like manufacturer that they like and they trust.
Yep. And then so the last part of it is sort of the various things you can do. The base ones, which are sort of you see before, the fighter pilot, kind of for Squadron 42. The Wing Commander set up Mercenary, Explorer, Bounty Hunter, Merchant, Pirates, Privateers, and that's kind of the sort of standard that you've seen in a lot of space games over time. And then, we sort of felt like, and it's kind of one of the reasons why we're talking about all these ships, the sort of specialized ships, is that, you should be able to play this game and not have to fight. You should be able to do various things. If you want to be a captain of industry, you be a captain of industry. If you want to hire someone else to do the fighting for you, you should. You want to be someone that's a search and rescue specialist, you should. If you want to be a scientist, racer, medic, industrialist, journalist, courier, and all those, we're working actually very hard to do specific gameplay for that. And I think Tony Zurbeck, who's the Persistent Universe design director, has we had a post about being a star line, running a sort of a commercial sort of star line, and kind of the gameplay that would involve doing that. And we have the same stuff for mining and a bunch of the other stuff. So I think ultimately when all these pieces are in there, they'll just allow for a lot of sort of a rich experience in the universe that's sort of the way you want to set it up. And so that's kind of how we set up the world and sort of how we thought about it, and sort of how it's sort of informing how we're developing it. And if I can click this, it sort of all takes us to Squadron 42, which is the gateway into the game. It's, will be Citizen Con, not Games Con as well. We're going to we'll have some announcements and talk about Squadron 42. But essentially it's meant to be the entry point into the universe. So if you first play Star Citizen, you can go straight into flying around the universe, but we kind of recommend that you will play Squadron 42 to enter it and sort of learn the game mechanics and experience the sort of story that at the end of it will dump you back out into the Persistent Universe for you to sort of make your way. It's very much a game that's built in the sort of manner and spirit of what Wing Commander was, but set inside the Star Citizen universe.
And it's not tacked on, it's its own game.
Yes, it's I would definitely say that, me and Dave were over there since, I guess the end of April. Yeah, April. So what's it, April, May, June? Yeah, so 4 months. It's bigger than any Wing Commander that I've done. So we have, did you do a page count at the end of the script?
I kind of did. This is not including rewrites. It was including wild lines, not including rewrites. It's about 670 pages.
So 670 pages. We finished our shoot on the 66th day. So I don't know if most of you know film, but generally I've never done a film that shot that many days. The big movies, the big $200 million movies, somewhere between 60 and 90 days shooting. So it was a huge shoot. We did a whole bunch of stuff, and we'll be talking about some of that further on. But it by itself will be equivalent to any AAA $60 big PlayStation, Xbox One exclusive where everyone's invested a bunch of money. So I think you guys are back. You're going to get that and Star Citizen. It's going to be pretty good. It's going to be a pretty big deal. We're pretty excited about the story. We're doing some very interesting stuff with it. So I think it's going to be more vivid and real and more emotional than any of the ones I've done in the past. So right now I'm just telling you that, but I'll be able to show you some of that stuff soon. I'm really excited by it. I mean, we got some we did some really great stuff. There's some tech that we're working on that I think is really going to help bring it home, and it's pretty cool. So, but anyway, from the start, it's designed to fit inside the universe, and in some ways, it's a whole game, and it'll be cool. So, we're now our last little slide is community, and then we'll get to the Q&A, and I'll hand that over to Ben over on that side, if you want to talk about the community aspects here.
Oh, sure. Although I think this new report is actually more related to data and the community works with the fiction.
Oh,
I'm still letting you guys talk.
okay.
Can be.
Yeah, I mean, from the early days, that was always one of the things that I remember in the pre-GDC announcement was always like, the website needed to be a place where we knew there was going to be a lot of time to fill between the announcement, Kickstarter thing, until the game was released. And so, Chris was very adamant about building a website that was constantly getting content stuff to the backers and developing the world so everyone can kind of see it and we can weigh in on it and stuff like that. So, I mean, it started off initially with just sort of the time capsules transition into the news updates, which is sort of our weekly in fiction, type stuff. They're talking about the events that are happening, current events that are happening in the universe and stuff like that, and all kind of laying the groundwork so when the game goes live, you feel like you have a history built in,
And we still do that to
Oh,
this
yeah.
day, right? Every week we have at least one.
Yeah, there's one news update, I mean, for that, we're about 300 pages worth that we've done since the launch. But we also do War Builder, which is sort of a weekly thing we did, where we actually would throw out topics to the community and just sort of say, like, because again, I mean, if you look at our fan fiction section, I mean, it's huge and it's been going strong ever since we launched the site. So we have a lot of really creative people.
One of the things that surprised us, the day we launched, we went into a live chat and we would see what people are saying about all the people who are punching, because we were all already role playing.
Yeah.
Which is what led to our organization system. We wanted to get people into our world before we actually had a game for them.
Yeah, and I mean, I have to say that it's actually very cool to see so many people creating so much of their own story and history and fiction inside of this world or universe. It isn't, the game itself is alive, right? So I think that sort of speaks to laying the foundation at the very beginning of a world or a universe that people find relatable and they want to sort of add their own story into it. And for us, it's like that's actually one of the big inspirational parts for us. Is it actually helps inform what we do because we see, there's some amazing machinery out there where there's people like Fiendish Feder who's done some great stuff, and there's a few other people who've done some really great stuff where you actually see people put together videos using some of our assets, say in the engine, that sort of telling the stories or doing bits of that, kind of here's what it's like when someone's boarding a ship, or here's what it's like when someone's doing rescue and recovery. You can really sense that it builds this, people can see themselves inside the world, and it's great to sort of read the background. We have the organization system, which has, over 10,000 organizations now. And you can see everyone's backstory, and there's some pretty heavy role-playing aspects to quite a few of them, and it's really fun. Yeah. I quite enjoy it, and I think the team likes it too.
Yeah.
What's not less fun? You want to do that one?
Oh, sure. I
feel like I shouldn't talk so much. It's like me and Dave kind of done a bunch of talking, and you guys haven't done anything yet. You guys better have some questions for Ben and Sandra.
How about the content we put out every week?
This one needs to be kind of our dedication to making Star Citizen entirely in the world. When you go to buy a ship, you guys already know this because you've already bought ships, but you buy it in 2945 rather than 2015. We put out fiction content. I remember being a Wing Commander fan, I ate up every little bit of background fiction, the novelizations and the cartoon and all that background stuff, and I wanted to get that, people connected to that for Star Citizen from the very start. So we do ship commercials and stuff, trailers, ship brochures. We spark folks' imagination, hopefully.
We've been given the 15-minute warning.
All right, let's get to Q&A then.
Let's open it up to Q&A. We've got a microphone in the center. You guys want to form up? Please remember, we